Hello everyone, my name is Mayree, and I'm here speaking to you all. So excited for the Champaign-Urbana Folk and Roots Virtual Festival. Yay! I am really excited to be here today speaking about the Black Banjo Reclamation Project and all things of that nature. So I'm really grateful to be here on this beautiful planet, on this beautiful earth today. And I'm grateful to Spirit for allowing me to be here and bringing us together. And just grateful and thanking you all for being here and choosing to tune in. I work at the intersections of land-based healing, human emotion and energetics, and hands-on practical application of village building. I work with a trauma-informed lens, and I also work with a deep understanding of race issues, racism, and the politic of dominance, which is all tied in with colonization. These enormous issues of oppression are what has ultimately led and helped me to get onto this healing journey that I want, that I'm hoping that we can all be on together in many different ways. There's structures and attitudes of dominance that in our society that value white people, white bodies, white culture, and destroys, demeans, and dehumanizes people outside of that demographic. And working with the banjo, which is an amalgamation of a representation of how ancient African peoples have expressed, survived, released, celebrated, and gathered. This is what has been able to survive through all of that colonization that we still are able to have with us as Black people today. White folks, on the other hand, have gained access to this piece of culture through the act of enslaving and owning people. This is the legacy and the tradition behind white people playing the banjo. And it's the epitome of cultural appropriation, cultural theft, and ultimately those are byproducts of a more widespread cultural violence that we see has gone across the world. The Black Banjo Reclamation Project is dedicated to the reclamation of the banjo for Black people. It's an expansive reclamation that includes every aspect of that, including the knowledge of the music, being able to build instruments, growing and stewarding land in order to access the natural resources that are necessary to continue these earth-based practices and traditions found in Africa and continued across the diaspora. Our reclamation includes the rights to our own original music, intellectual property rights, and reparations to support stability around housing and building of generational wealth. We are culture bearers of earth-based African diasporic folk traditions. So, thank you for coming here, and this is an invitation to join and learn and see more of what it is that we're doing and how we're involving the rest of our community and asking for support and receiving support and collaborating. So this is sort of a question of how are we showing up for this work, for the work that we're doing. So for myself and what I love to cultivate is that for you and for us to come here as a way to get free of patterns of oppression. Our liberation is tied together. It isn't white people who are going to set us free, and we aren't asking for permission to do that, but rather we're informing and being in communication about our work so that people can support and plug in different ways. So this is an opportunity to learn and to grow. So I ask for willingness, openness, and feeling into what's coming up for us, period. I believe that healing is possible. I believe in healing and change, and that it's possible for people to come to grips with how severe this problem is, so that we can stop being in a delusion and being in denial about the fact that we have a responsibility and we have a role and a place, very unique position that we're in right now. You're welcome in this space to enter a space of newness, vulnerability, and even bravery. It's not easy. It's really not easy, and it shouldn't be easy. It's very hard for a lot of folks, Black folks, and Indigenous people, to come back to our traditions. It's a very difficult thing when we've been separated through this colonization, and it shouldn't be easy for white people to go and have those traditions. It should be just as hard, for you. It should be a process of actually seeing that it's not that easy for everyone to come and enjoy this instrument, in this part of the culture. So it's not easy, and you will make mistakes. I will make mistakes, absolutely, and let's not be afraid of that. I don't want to be afraid of that, and don't let white fragility control you and the situation of how you act and how you respond. Because remember, if you are white, you are benefiting from white supremacy, and you're benefiting from white privilege, as far as that also goes for people that have a proximity to whiteness as well. So, we'll throw perfectionism out the door and just accept that this is more of a journey than it is. It is definitely a destination as well. So it's a choice to address what is real and what has never actually been okay for so many reasons. It's not the time for excuses. It's the time to really settle into what our work and our role is right now with this. So that brings us to challenging white supremacy, because that's something that I feel is very important with the banjo. Because as long as the banjo has existed here, as soon as white people were able to get that, and that goes back to, even that painting of the old plantation that was painted in the late 1700s, which was actually one of the first times that the banjo shows up in modern, in painting and actually in that type of communication. So as long as it's been here with white folks, white people have attempted, and in many cases even successfully, to use the banjo as a tool of white supremacy. And this also is still perpetuated, even if it's not consciously happening. It is the erasure of culture, and very often this is a technique for terrorism employed as psychological and spiritual warfare. So this much must be challenged and must be dismantled, because this white terrorism is alive right now, and it's alive within people individually and as well as at our society at large, and we're very clearly seeing that right now. So through the BBRP, we get a chance to see a glimpse of what the decolonization of the banjo looks like for Black people. Some of those examples are connecting in community, building and growing in ways like our ancestors did. And I ask this question: what does the decolonization of the banjo look like for white people? So white people are included in this journey and this process of decolonization, and white people should be centered in their own decolonization. And that is something that you have to look to the land back movements of indigenous people. You have to look at the movements that Black people have pushed forward to reparations, because this is not a language that was created by white people. It was something that are the same tools that we have used for our own liberation are tools that anyone can use, as long as they are really understanding and honoring where this comes from. Which is that as long as colonization has persisted, people have been rejecting it. So y'all accessed the banjo through colonization. This is the original, this is the way that the banjo got here. You know, there's a lot of different stories, there's a lot of different things that you've heard people saying about whether that was people that were on ships that were actually physically capturing people who had the banjos. They were targeted for even having these instruments. So there was a lot of reasons why, you know, when we see that it has to do with that genocide and that sort of pillaging and that coming into a place and taking people and taking stuff. So it's in that type of tradition. So these, what does it take? What is it going to take for white people to question the very nature of why they're even playing the banjo? Because this definitely needs to be questioned. So these questions are not popular and they're seldom asked, but here's a few more. Why are white people so obsessed with studying about the banjo as it relates to African culture? We are living in a modern day crisis of white terrorism and racism, and there's so much history of white European people that's going completely unanalyzed in regards to understanding white people's current psychological state of racism and that insanity, yet white people seem to be the least interested group in solving and addressing racism than any other group. So what is this distraction from racism? And instead, it looks more like a fetishization and an infatuation with black banjo for white researchers, because there have been many books written about this. And so white people playing the banjo because of this tradition is continually a form of white supremacy, and so is it when research is done by white people and those narratives and those stories are taken away and silenced from black people. So black people telling black stories and narratives is empowering, and it's important representation that no white researcher will ever be able to provide us with. So the white narrative of banjo, whether that be black-faced minstrelsy, ethnomusicological research, the music, the stories, they are not an accurate representation of black culture. And actually, more so, they show insight into the psyche, motivations, and obsessions of white people, of this cultural aspect. And this is what needs to be researched. This is what needs to be analyzed. This is what needs to be looked at on a deeper level. And it needs to be done for the sole purpose of dismantling a power structure that continues to silence black people and upholds white supremacy by tokenizing and perpetuating a myth and a delusion of the colonization and the theft of this land, romanticizing it, turning it into the Western manifest destiny, when we are looking at some very serious things that anyone can see, because this is colonization and the theft of land that is still happening. So currently, you are on Bodewadmiakwan land, also known as Potawatomi, Kickapoo, Kickapoo, Miami, Ocheti Sakowing, which is the Lakota Sioux, and Peoria. I currently reside on the Chochenyo Ohlone territory. This is addressing what is, the land that we stand on in order to address and heal ancestral and generational trauma that needs to be addressed and healed, very much so. So many people have suffered at the hands of others, and those who have caused harm and that others have suffered from also are experiencing a type of trauma as well that lives in the body and is passed down. And there's actually a really good book that you can read called My Grandmother's Hands that I can recommend to you that addresses some of this ways of healing this trauma. And through the reason why this is important is because the banjo itself brings up so much of that trauma inside of people, and we recognize that as people who play these instruments. So and we also see on the flip side of that the access to healing that we have through that. So we want to help people I want to help people on this journey of recognition, repair, and creating new pathways of transparency and consent in the culture of banjo that we just have never seen before. So what are some steps moving forward that we can take and that you can take to these are just steps that may help you on your journey, basically. So one of them, and this can be definitely a really hard step, but it's a great one to start with, is understanding your relationship to slavery and genocide on this continent and around the world. There are records, they are on the internet, of documented of every family that kept people as slaves. It has the names of those people, it has the dollar amount of what was bought and sold, including the goods on the market and stolen land. So this is the basis of what racism is in our country, and without understanding our relationship to what we have access to, it's really hard to understand this in a material way. So we have to understand this in order to even go to this next step, which is really just disrupting patterns of white supremacy, disrupting harmful patterns that we are part of, that we might not even be aware of, and being able to just identify that. Also, being able to identify inside of ourselves, inside of our bodies, our sadness and our grief and our feelings, and giving ourselves permission to experience what's happening for us, because it's a lot. Our whole world is a lot. Learning through listening, reading, participating, these are all ways that we are not just going to sit idle right now. Consider paying reparations. One way to do that is even through our Patreon. There's so many different groups that we can recommend to you around the country, maybe closer in your own area. But the Black Banjo Reclamation Project is a nationwide and a worldwide phenomenon that we're supporting everywhere, and specifically here in California as well. And so like we have a lot of programming that we're working on currently, and also online. So there's so much that you can support that we're doing to continue this education and to continue the access that people have to land and their indigenous practices as well. So seek deeper support and community, so like don't end the conversation here. This is just the beginning, and hopefully there's other ways that we can be of support to you. The other thing is just know that this is a process, and accept the process, acknowledge the process, and just know that we're on a journey, and that it's something that we're all working on every day, step by step. But so many people have not had a choice in this. It has not been consensual for us to have our culture stolen from us. And so this is why this is something that affects all of us. We're all included in this healing right now. So I really appreciate everybody that has just listened today, and I really hope we can grow with you more. And I'm gonna leave you with a song that is one of my my own songs, actually.